So the purpose of this video is to show you how the Canvas rubrics for Calkins align with some of your previous work. So if you take a look at the right hand side of the screen, you have the argument writing rubric and standards alignment. This shows the criteria on the left hand side. In the center then it shows how it's scored, basically the number of points, and then on the right hand side the basically the standards that are aligned with the criteria. So you'll see this W1, W1A, and that kind of thing over on the right. So that stuff matters because in Canvas you can't score anything that's worth more than 4 when it comes to an actual standard if you're using proficiency. So we don't ever want to have a standard score exceeding 4 points. Thus, we have to actually add this particular standard, W1A, in this example more than one time, so that it technically gets scored twice, but it's going to be just the same exact score, and so on and so forth. So we'll be able to show that in just a moment. So these standards you'll see in Canvas shortly, and then in the end, the assignment itself is going to add up to 44 points. And then this would be obviously the rubric that you're using as far as the criteria is concerned, because right now in Canvas we do not have the criteria associated with the outcomes. The outcomes just have a single word in each one, like proficient, for example, to indicate how many points a student scored. So this is the background. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Now let's go over to Canvas and just see how that plays out. First of all, you need to make an assignment. I've called this one Argument Writing Grade 7, and then you can put whatever descriptors or directions you need in that box below. Then it's going to be out of 44 points because we have 44 points down on the bottom of our actual assignment. And then we're going to use an assignment group. You choose summative most likely, and then you would choose the letter grade, because if you're using a proficiency grading scheme, you want to push that letter grade out. You'll choose a submission type again. If you're doing it on paper, you'll choose that. If you're not doing it on paper, if you're doing it online, you'll just choose the appropriate box here. Normally you might choose website URL if you want a live Google document. If you want a not live Google document, but just a copy of one of them, at one moment in time, choose File Upload. So you can select that, and then at the bottom here you'll assign it to whomever is supposed to actually take this assessment. So I'm going to go ahead and push Save. After it saves, then this is where you have the opportunity to add a rubric. So I'll go down to the bottom to push plus rubric. And normally we'd ask you here to push find outcome, but instead we're going to have you push find rubric because the rubric's already been created. I'm going to expand this a little bit to make it a little easier to see. And so in this section I have now a whole bunch of rubrics that might pop up. On the left hand side I also have an area, a location where some rubrics exist, and that's the Oshkosh Area School District. So if you click on Oshkosh Area School District, these are some rubrics that exist at the district level, and we're going to go ahead and select the right one. So in my case, I'm going to be doing a 7th grade argument writing, and so I want to make sure I choose that appropriate rubric for that. So I click on 7th grade argument writing rubric, and then I have the ability down below, if I scroll down a bit, to just say use this rubric. What happens then is that all these standards in a row are imported, and they're imported in the exact same order in which they would appear on this particular document. So I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that when I am editing this, that I use this rubric for assignment grading, so that whatever I click on will also go into the grade book. And now if you see on the bottom it's worth 44 points, and now I'm going to go ahead and split screen again so we can see how this stuff aligns. So right at the top here we have W1, which is the same as W1 over here, and that's worth 4 points total because it only comes up one time. The next one, however, is worth 8 points, and it's W1A. Well, we have W1A appearing 2 times over here, so if you see both of these are W1A. Together, those 2 rows equal 8 points. So if the student scores a 3, for example, in one, they'll have to score 3 right after it and that next one, and that would basically be what you would end up giving them for this particular one anyway. So you'll score 3 and 3, and then you'll move on. And then when we look down to one of the more complicated ones, this transitions one is a little bit difficult because it says transitions is technically scored in craft, which is down here, so you have to use a 3 times multiplier. Well, what we decided to do for this one is to say that transitions up here is worth 4, and then if you go down to where craft is on the lower part of the rubric, you'll see W1C appear again. So technically W1C is here, it's here, and it's also here, and that would technically work as your times 3 multiplier. The first one would be for transitions, and then the down below would be the things that you score for craft. That makes sense. So you'll see that they're basically aligned the same way. Elaboration here is also is a 2 times 1, so you'll see that W1B exists here, and it also exists here. And as you move down the line, you'll see spelling and punctuation. So if I go down to L02, spells correctly, that's the second to last one, and then punctuation and sentence structure is the final one there. So basically that rubric's been imported already and it's ready for scoring. So if I expand this again, and I want to go ahead and start scoring it, if I just push speed grader, I have my test student, and I can expand this, move it over a bit, and just push view rubric. When I push view rubric, then my entire rubric pops up. So if I'm reading the Google document on the left-hand side, I can then choose, for example, proficient for the overall potentially, and then here's my W1As. I can always see these here to which standard I'm scoring. And if I decide that it's a 3.5, I can type in my 3.5 here, and I want to do it again below because that one's scored 2 times. And what's happening is that the total points are being added up at the bottom of this as I am scoring it. So eventually when I go ahead and push save, this particular rubric is going to add all of that information up, and it's going to place a score in the gradebook for me. So again, I'll score each of these, just kind of clicking through as I go. If I get interrupted, I can push save. It will put a grade in there for me right away, but then I can go back to it and change that grade if I need to. So one of the things you can do is mute an assignment in the middle of these. So if you want to score them all, you leave the assignment muted, and then you basically you end up letting the students know after you unmute an assignment. So you can keep on scoring and they won't even know that you're in the process. So I score it, keep on going. It's going to keep on adding. You can see this total changing on the bottom as I end up doing that. And once I'm done, I push save, and it will add up the scores for me in here and then show that grade as a B, for example. So it'll show that the 31 out of 44 ends up being that particular score. So this is basically the concept of it. Hopefully it makes a lot of sense, and hopefully it'll help you save a little bit of time in the long run. But please definitely let us know if you have questions.